Parshas Vayak-el and then Perkudei.
Hello.
Before we get into it, let's talk about this special maftir that I mentioned. The maftir being the last part of the Torah reading. We have very often the rabbis institute special readings at the end in order to connote certain things that happen throughout the year. So we have what's called four special parshas, four special maftirs that we read from Purim until Pesach, well actually before Purim, from this era, right? 4 weeks, 4 times before Pesach, we do it. You have Zachor, which is the one that has to do with remembering Amalek. You have HaChodesh, which is coming up, which is when you begin the month of Nisan. So Chodesh means month, so it talks about the month of Nisan. And you have, right, you've got 4 different ones. And the one this week is Para. Para is it means cow, and it's talking about the Para Aduma, the red cow. And the red cow is a mitzvah in the Torah that when a person becomes tameh, and being tameh is sort of hard to explain. What it means is that there are certain spiritual abilities that every person has. Everyone has these abilities, and that there are certain things that you can do which sort of hinder them from working. Some of these things, they're not because you did anything wrong. It's a reality. For instance, if you come into contact with a dead person, or you're in a room with a dead person, or you come into contact with anybody who's come in contact with a dead person, which basically means everybody today. In order for you to go into the temple and to eat certain sacrifices, specifically one of them being the Passover sacrifice, you have to become tahor, which means you have to now have gotten rid of this sort of spiritual inability and became spiritually able again. Most people say it's pure and impure, but it's got nothing to do with being pure or clean or dirty. It has to do with the spiritual ability. There are the ability to receive certain spiritual things that you can do when you are tahor that you can't do when you are tameh. Today we don't really do this. The closest we have to this is the women who go to a mikveh, right? When they go to a mikveh, what they're doing is that they become tahor because when they were menstruating, they became tameh. And the reason why they become tameh is not simply because of blood, is because there was an egg, and what happens when one menstruates, the egg dies, and it goes away. There was a potential for that egg to become a life, and it didn't. So therefore, by its not becoming a life, it causes tuma to whoever has it. And so in this case, the woman. Now again, it's not bad or good. There's nothing right or wrong. There's no punishment or reward. Nothing to do with it. It's just a reality. And therefore, when a woman goes to the mikveh, she then becomes spiritually able from that loss. Right? That's what happens when a person touches the dead. That's the highest level of this tuma. Some people call it uncleanliness, but it has nothing to do with that. And so the way that you get alleviated from coming in contact with the dead is with a paraduma, where the Torah tells us that you take a red calf and they shecht it in a special location outside of the temple, and they burn it, and they take the ashes, and the ashes are sprinkled on people, and any person who has the ashes sprinkled on them, then that person becomes tahor, becomes able to go and eat sacrifices and go into the temple, where they could not before. So one of the interesting things about it is that the Kohen who does the ritual, he has to be tahor, he has to be able from the beginning in order to do the ritual. And everybody who he does it for, though, is not tahor. They are not able, and he repairs that. But at the end result is that he, by doing that, becomes tameh. He becomes unable to go back into the temple by doing this. It's an interesting concept. Right? He has to be spiritually able in order to help others become spiritually able, but after he's done so, he becomes unable. And it shows one the fact that They know that the fact that we're all together, we work as a unit, the Jewish people are very close and we all help each other, that the fact that we help each other is, while we are more powerful when we're a unified force, there is an effect on each individual sometimes. And sometimes when a person takes the role of the leader, while there's a lot to gain as being the leader, also there's sometimes a loss. Right? You can see sometimes leaders, you often notice sometimes they go gray very quickly. Right, because of all of the problems people have, and they try to help people with their problems. That's a price that they pay. That's similar to the Kohen who becomes spiritually unable, right, but by helping people becoming spiritually able. So it's one of the ideas, and that's this week. The reason we read that this week is because in the desert and in the days of the temple, this was about the time of year when they would actually go through this process with this red cow, because they wanted everyone to be ready for Passover, right, which is in a few weeks. So therefore this Shabbos we read the part of the Torah talking about that. So that's one of the things. And we have the 4 different ones, each one dealing with a preparation to get closer to Passover. So, so that's where we are now, in the middle. Yeah?
Sorry to interrupt you. Would there be a difference in the service for cleansing a man and for cleansing a woman?
No, not when you're dealing with the red heifer, with the red cow, because that's anybody who comes into contact with the dead. That's the most severe. Right? For instance, there are times, there are different levels of this. There are lower levels where a person, they didn't come in contact with the dead, but so something else happened, and then going to a mikveh can help. Right? That's one of the reasons that, like, a woman goes to the mikveh, right?
So a child falls and has a fracture, one of those kinds that bones stick out of the compound or whatever they call it. That's like being in contact with blood. So you have
no, it's not blood. That's the problem. It's the lack of fulfilling the spiritual potential. When a woman, like I said, it has nothing to do with good or bad. But when a woman menstruates, that means that the egg, which had a potential to become a human life, did not. It died. Right? It's not to do with the blood. The blood is basically a vehicle that nurtures the egg, so it comes out. That's the idea. When a person dies, right, their potential to grow is gone. And when you're alive, you can change. You can do things. When you die, wherever you are is where you are.
So you could be a doctor and you could see your patients in your consulting rooms, and you would not necessarily be
Tameh. You probably would become Tameh because you only have to be in a room with somebody who has been in a room with someone who died. That's all it takes to become Tameh. So you go to a funeral, you're Tameh. And until you go to the Paraduma, anyone you come into contact with becomes Tameh. So it's a very easy.
Wash.
Well, that's a part of it. That's very easy to become Tameh. Right? It's and most people usually are. Today, everybody is. Everyone is. There's no out of it. You don't have the red heifer, the cow. We don't have it anymore. So let's take a look at the parshas. Now we have 2 parshas this week, and the reason that we have 2 is that when the rabbi set up the reading of the Torah, they set up the reading of the Torah in a certain way to accomplish a number of things. One of them is to accomplish finishing the reading of the entire Torah in a course of a year. So depending on how the holidays fall, sometimes you might not read a Torah parsha on a certain Shabbos. Right? Usually every Shabbos we read a parsha, but let's say one week we're going to read a parsha, but it's Passover. So we may not read the regular Shabbos parsha, we'll read the Passover parsha. But you got to read that parsha sometime. So now you need another week to do it, right? You've lost one Shabbos. In order to do that, so the rabbis sometimes will take 2 parshas and put them together so that it'll still end up at the end of the year. You finish it. They also want that the year should coincide with the Torah reading, and since they're not necessarily the same number, you have to adjust it, because otherwise we'll be finishing the Torah in June rather than in October, like by Simchas Torah, because the Torah reading would keep switching. So we have to alternate it by taking sometimes 2 parshas and putting it together, which pushes us a week ahead, and then we can stay in line. So this is one of those occasions where we have 2. Last year, for instance, we didn't have any, where we had 2, and that was because last year was a leap year, and a Jewish leap year adds a month, not a day, and that gives you 4 extra weeks. And normally you would have had to have put some parshas together, but by having the 4 extra weeks, it gives you the ability that you never have to put them together. This year, following a leap year, we have one or two where they're put together, and this week is one. So Vayak-el and Perkudei, and why they pick those usually is because there are similarities in the parshas that would make it that it fits, that they can be put together, and also very often the parshas are relatively short, and therefore they put them together. Otherwise, you'd be in shul all day. So they tried to do that. As it is, we're there most of the day. So these two parshas, Vayak-el, Perkudei, what has similarity about them is that they are the concluding parshas dealing with what we've been talking about the last few weeks, which is the building and creation of the Mishkan, the portable temple that went in the desert, that eventually, right, was the microcosm of the Beis HaMikdash, of the temple. But in the desert, it was made in a very precise way, and the Torah tells us first how they got how were they able to get all of the things that they needed to build it, what it was that they needed, how they were able to acquire people who knew how to do it. And then finally we get to this week's Parsha, and it begins that they're pretty much finishing. There's just some last pieces that they're doing. Next week's Parsha, they actually, which is this week, next week's Parsha is this week, we're doing two, is it's completed. And now they want to put it together. They want to assemble it. And that assembly was done on the first day of the month of Nisan, which we are just under 3 weeks away from. So that's why it's coinciding with this time of year. Okay, so that's where we are. The Rosh Chodesh Nisan is about 10 days from now, the month of Nisan. That's when they put up the Mishkan, and Passover is 2 weeks after that. Okay. So we begin that right here in the beginning. So we begin with Parshas Vayak-el. One of the first things it tells us, if you look, it starts talking about the Shabbos. It says, Vayak-el Moshe is called Adas B'nai Yisrael. Moshe gathered together the entire Jewish nation. V'yomer, and he says to them, Alehem, to them, Eila ha-devarim asher tziva Hashem lasos asam. These are the following statements that I'm going to tell you that God has told us to do. And then he tells us right here, on 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day shall be holy, a day of complete rest. Whoever does work on it shall be put to death. You shall not kindle fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Here is one of the times that Shabbos, the law of Shabbat, is commanded to us, and it's found here. Now the commentaries want to know, why does it, of all places, is it found here? So one of them is to show you a correlation between the temple and Shabbos. There are a number of them. One is Shabbos is a time, it's a day, right? It has to do with time, and it is the placing by God of holiness into time. The whole idea that time can be holy, that you can have a day where you, simply by cooking food, you can be doing something wrong, while on every other day you're not. Right? On Shabbos you're not allowed to cook. On Shabbos you're not allowed to drive, for instance. Every other day you can have lots of very good reasons and necessary reasons to drive, and it's perfectly fine. On Shabbos we're not supposed to. So there's something about this time that's different. So the Shabbos is the idea of putting holiness into time. Right? At the same time, we immediately begin talking about the final stages of building the Mishkan. The Mishkan, and later the temple itself, are the idea of putting holiness into space. Places. There are holy places. There are places that are more holy and less holy. The temple in Jerusalem is holy. The Holy of Holies inside of the temple is even holier than the temple. So you have these types of ideas that there is such a thing as Kedusha, holiness found in time, and holiness found in space. This is what the Torah is telling us here, which is a very important idea. That it means that there's an idea that the rules of time and rules of space are not mundane scientific facts. They are gifts of God. They are rules that we live under. Right? We're governed by time and we're governed by space. I can't be in two places at once. I can't get to, I don't know where, Baltimore, Maryland in a second. Right? Just by saying I want to. There are rules of space. There are rules of time. I can't, be in two places at the same time, time-wise. I can't do something faster than I'm allowed. I can't stop time. I can't go back in time. All of these are rules, but it's more than just a science. It has holiness within it. God created it, so it has a holy aspect. So they tie together the laws of Shabbos here. God puts it together with the laws of the final assembly and closing of the Mishkan. And the next line tells us a repetitive statement that we've had before. It says, Moshe says to the entire assembly of the children of Israel, saying, this is the word that Hashem has commanded. Take from yourselves a portion for Hashem. Right? He's saying, take from yourselves tzedakah. I want you to give now for the community to build the Mishkan. You should give gold, silver, copper, turquoise, purple, scarlet wool, linen, goat hair, red dyed ram skins, tachash skins, acacia wood, oil for illumination, spices for the ointment oil, and the aromatic incense, shoham stones, and stones for the settings for the ephod and the breastplate. So this statement clearly appears to be a list of items that God tells the Jewish people, I need for you to build the Mishkan. Now, we already know this. It's said it before, and they built the Mishkan. It's coming in, he's telling us again. But there's one I found very interesting thing about this sentence. If you look at the sentence, it's describing physical objects based on their worth. Like, what's one of the most expensive things in the world is gold. All right, so you'll notice here, it begins by saying, he says, everyone whose heart motivated, right, he should bring gold. And what comes after gold is silver. Silver is the next thing in line. Then copper, which is worth less, but is also expensive. Then turquoise, purple, which is the clothing of royalty. Scarlet wool, linen, goat hair. Now everything's becoming less expensive as you go down, till you get to the point of spices. Oil and spices, which are also less expensive, and incense, right, which is less expensive. Now you've gone from gold, right, worth hundreds of dollars a gram, to incense, which is worth pennies, right, for a big piece. It goes down. But then suddenly it says, shoham stones and stones for the settings of the ephod and the breastplate. Now it throws off the whole sentence, because these stones were precious jewels, were precious and semi-precious jewels. What you found in the breastplate that they're go to war, you wore here, right, were 12 stones, each one signifying a different tribe of the Jewish people. And each one of them, right, was a different stone. Each one of those stones were precious or semi-precious stones. Today, we would use them as jewelry. Right? They were very expensive. So the commentaries all want to know, if we're talking, clearly the way this sentence is structured, that the most expensive thing is the gold, and it goes all the way down to the incense, then why does it suddenly add the stones? The stones should be in the, up there with the gold. Why do they put them at the end? Do you hear the question? Right? Financially, the cost. There should be that the stones are together at the beginning with the gold, not at the end. So the answer, there are many answers, but one answer that I find very pertinent is that when we look at how did they get these things? How did they actually get to the temple, for the Mishkan, these objects? So the Jews gave it. So it says the following. It says that when Moshe told this, those are the princes, the head of every tribe, told the people the following. They said, we need all of these things for the temple, and we have to do this. This is a building fund that's going to have extra. We're going to really do everything. At the end of the building fund, what the leaders, the head of each tribe, we have decided we're going to do is you, the Jewish people, you go out and give everything you want to give. Whatever. In this list, give what you can. When it's over, whatever's left that has to be given, we'll give. That's what they said. Right? So you go, if we need, let's say, 100 pounds of gold, so the Jewish people should give gold. If you only get 98 pounds, we'll give 2. If you got 100 pounds, then we don't have to give any. So they said, don't have to worry. Whatever you need, I think it's a very nice thing. You imagine if you're running an organization, then you go fundraising and you ask this guy for $100, this one $1,000, $5,000, $50. The guy says, what are you asking me for $1,000? Here's what I'll do. You go out there and raise as much money as you can. On March 1st, when that comes, right, and whatever money you need to run your organization, I'll pay the rest. Yeah. Right? That's a nice thing. That's what the princes did. The princes said, you Jewish people go out and get all of your stuff that you want to donate, and whatever is lacking, right, we'll give it. We're there to underwrite it. We'll make sure that it's all there, so you don't have to worry. That's a very nice thing. But the Torah doesn't think it's a very nice thing. Because what happened in the end was the Jews gave everything that was needed for the temple and more. So that when it came time for the princes to give, there was nothing for them to do. They couldn't give anything, because everything had been given. So it says then that Hashem went and told them, okay, you can give the stones for the breastplate. Because everything else was for the building. Right? A breastplate's not a part of the building. They bought skins to make the walls, and they got the floor, and they got the gold to make the objects for the building. Everything that they needed for the building was being made. Right? And that's what everything else was. Suddenly these stones really don't fit. The reason they're out of order, but they also don't necessarily fit. There were no stones in the temple. The stones were on the Kohen's clothing, right? These precious jewels. So that was added into here because God wanted to allow them to give, because they felt bad that they couldn't give. But they were lazy and they didn't give when they were supposed to. They thought, we're going to be big shots. Whatever everybody else can't give, we're going to take care of. In the end, they ended up not being able to give anything. So the Torah puts the stones at the end to tell you that when they did this, they did it because they were being arrogant. And that's what they were doing. They were saying, you don't have to worry. We've got everything you need. You guys go out and do what you got to do, and whatever's left, we'll take care of the rest. Well, that's not their place. They were supposed to contribute like everyone else. And for them to do that, while it appears to be very magnanimous and a nice thing, in this case the Torah doesn't see that to be the case. The Torah sees it that they were being basically arrogant and that we will take care of it, but we're going to let you little people do it first, and then whatever is left we're going to take care of. And then when there was nothing left to take care of, so Hashem gave them the stones. And you can give the stones. Now when they told them to give the stones, it was sort of... it's a left-handed compliment. On the one hand, I'm going to let you give the stones, which are a nice thing, but on the other hand, they're not worth that much to me. They cost a lot of money, but they're not worth that much to me because you didn't put the effort into it. You didn't really do anything. In the end, you were supposed to contribute. You didn't contribute. Now you can say whatever you want, but you didn't. Not only that, but there's a medrash that tells us that when it was time for them to give the stones, they said to Hashem, "Where are we supposed to get these things? I mean, we don't have rubies and sapphires. I'm in the desert. Where am I going to get a ruby? I don't get a ruby. I'm not in India. I'm in the desert outside of Israel." So it says that Hashem said, "You're right." So he had clouds come from all over the world, and in the clouds were jewels. And so that they rained at that time, the jewels rained down, and they took those, and they were able to give them. So what does the medrash mean? Because remember, medrash is not always literal. Very often medrash is to teach you a lesson. It's always to teach you a lesson, but very often it teaches you a lesson and it doesn't mean that it really happened. So what it's telling us here, a very important lesson, is that in the end, when they didn't put the effort when they were supposed to do it, and they ended up not being able to give, then when Hashem tells them what they can give, Hashem sends it to them free of charge. Not only did they not put the effort into it, they helped no loss. Right? If I go and I have $1,000 and I give $100 to charity, I'm doing a good deed. I'm going to get the money back. I'm glad to do it, but I still only have $900 right now. Right? These guys, right, they didn't have that. They had to give the stones. They had the same amount of money after this. They had the stones as before because it didn't cost them anything. They came through a miracle. Because they came through a miracle, and because there was no effort put in, and because they seemed to be arrogant, Hashem says these stones mean very little to me. They're not as important. The poor person who gave the incense, that was important because they gave of themselves. They worked on themselves. They gave as much as they could. The rich prince, who was the head, who didn't take the time to give himself, and then there was nothing to give. Then when I tell him what I need, he doesn't have it, and then I send it to him as a gift, right? So then he didn't do anything for me. It's worth very little. That's why in the PARSHA you have the stones at the end, because it's not listed by the worth. It's listed by the amount a person gave up. What did the person put into it? So there was more put into the gold, the silver, than the incense than there was into the stones. That just teaches a point on that. Yes.
Right. I don't understand where did they get the gold and the silver? Like I thought.
When they left Egypt.
Well, they got it from Egypt.
Yeah. When they left Egypt, they were told to take the wealth of Egypt. So when they're at the Red Sea, they also got more. Because all of the chariots of the army, they were so sure they were going to capture the Jews, they decorated all their chariots with jewelry, so that when they came back, they would be, shining. And of course, when they went into the sea, it all sunk. And it says that Hashem caused all of the gold, silver, and jewelry to come out of the sea on the bank, and the Jews collected it.
But do you consider that was a lot for them to, did everybody have gold and silver? Then that didn't seem like it was a big sacrifice to give that.
Well, they dedicated all their lives as slaves. Right? That was their payment, basically. And that was what they have. You don't find throughout the rest of the 40 years in the desert that suddenly they have a windfall of money. right? This money has to make it all the way for them to get to Israel, and they would have money, right? And it wasn't that they had to work for the money directly, but this was the way that Hashem gave it to them. And then, there's a famous story. I don't know if it's a true story, but it's a famous story. And it's a story about a fundraiser in Jerusalem went to see one of the Rothman family. So supposedly, that's why I don't know if it's a true story, because they're generous in the story and they're generous in real life. But they were doing, one of them was doing a deal in Jerusalem, right? A business deal, and the deal came through, and he made a lot of money. That night, after the deal, he gets a knock on his hotel room, and there's a guy coming to ask for a donation. So he's, like right now, I imagine here this guy has gone through all this work this day. He made this deal. He finally collects money. He's traveled all the way from Canada to Israel. He's exhausted. He wants to go to sleep. And a guy comes and knocks on his door and has to have money now. So he asks him, why do you have to have money now? Can't you wait till tomorrow? He says, no, I can't. I have to have the money today. He says, why? He says, because today this money is a windfall. Tomorrow it's an asset. Tomorrow it's your money. You have it. It's already your money, like whatever other money you have. Today, this is new money. It's a windfall, right? You know how they say that when a person goes to Las Vegas and they make money, it's cheap, right? That's why they sell, like, they have stores in all the hotels. Like, they sell like $25,000 watches. Imagine how many people in one city can buy $25,000 watch in one day. Like, it can't be that many. In Las Vegas, it can happen. Why? Because the person goes there, they gamble, which is not the greatest idea, but if they're going to go and gamble, and then they win, now they won $20,000, right? So what are you going to do? $20,000 can help you, right, in your life. It can do a lot of good. No, it came easy, I'm going to spend it easy. And they only buy a Rolex watch for $20,000. They go home because the money is not, it's not like my money yet. It's new, right? So that's the same idea here. When the Jews collected the money at the Red Sea, the money was new money to them. But now it's already later on, right? We're already going into the first year. Now it's assets. This is my money. This is in my bank account. And it's not new money. It means something to me. So they gave it up. But the priests also had that money, and they weren't prepared to give it up at that point. They were going to wait, and then they ended up not being able to. That's the difference.
But also there was the SHMOS, that you carried it around with you for 40 years.
That's true, although I don't know if I would mind. Would you mind carrying like 6-7 ounces of gold with you?
Rabbi, I can forget a note to a shop at grocery. Where did we put the jewels? We had them in the locker.
But if I gave you like 20 Krugerrands, I bet you wouldn't say it's too heavy to carry home. Right?
Make a plan, but
She's holy.
You sew it in your garment. You don't forget it.
So, we had this whole long discussion, as we just had, and it goes through all the different things that they have to give the temple. And we turned the page to 5:18 and 5:19, and verse 20 says...
Sorry, one last word. The Shochan stones, does that describe what kind of stone they were? Does it say that they were semi-precious, or just these are the breastplate stones?
Right, here it doesn't tell you. But in the place where it talks about the breastplate itself, it tells you the details of the stones. So here, we look at verse 20 on 5:18 and 5:19. It says, the entire assembly of the children of Israel left Moshe's presence. So what did we have? It says Moshe gathers together all the Jewish people, and he tells them the following, right? He goes through 20 statements, and then the last statement it says, and the assembly of the children of Israel left Moshe's presence. Well, why does the Torah tell us this? Do we think that the Torah doesn't tell us that they never left? They stood there forever, the rest of their lives. They stood there outside of this place where they had their meeting. And Moshe gives a speech, and he finishes, and they just stay there? Of course they left. It's over. Right? Then you go to a concert, right? You go to the concert, it's over, you leave. They don't have to tell you to leave. They don't have to make an announcement, okay, everyone should leave now. They don't do that. So why are they Torah telling us that he left? So I saw a commentary that says, the Torah is not telling us that everybody left. The Torah is telling us that they left Moshe's presence. That here the Jewish people are interacting with Moshe. Moshe is the king of the Jewish people. He is also the greatest prophet who ever lived. He talked one-to-one with God, and that just happens right before this. And basically, when a person has interactions with a great person, it affects you. Right? There's a real effect. Like, for instance, let's say you're walking down the street and you see a guy staggering down the street, and he smells of alcohol. Right? So if I ask you, where did he come from? Where was that guy? You could tell me where. Right? What are you going to tell me? Was it a bar? Where else would he be? That he's drunk, walking down the street in the middle of the day. He must have been in a bar. Right? You see a person who has a relationship with a great person. Right? They spend time with a great person like Moshe. It's going to affect them. It's going to show on their face. You're going to be able to see the effect. And it's true. You know, I've had occasion in my life to have to meet celebrities, and also to meet some of the greatest rabbinic figures of our time. It's really been, it's a merit that I don't know where it comes from, that I've had that opportunity to meet some of the great Hasidic Rebbes and some of the great rabbis, and to have conversations with them, many of them who are no longer living or haven't been living for up to 20 years. But I've had that opportunity. And in any time that I've done it, I've always been so impressed by the person, because you know there's always something very, very special about in one unique way, but then there's just a special thing about them as a whole, each one of them. So you have, you know, one of them might be, you know, really brilliant and very personable, another one who's not personable at all, but he's very righteous, right? And you get to meet the people and you can feel it about them. And one thing I can tell you for sure is that every one of them affected me. So at least in the short term, I wish in the long term, but sometimes we don't work so well. In the short term, it had an effect on me. I was a different person after meeting them and speaking to them and seeing what they're like, realizing what a human being can become, you know, how great some of these people really are. On the other hand, I've met celebrities where our impression of celebrities are that they're like the characters that they play. They can be very friendly, they can be nice, they're beautiful, they're, you know, the kind of person you'd want to have as a friend. But when the more you get to know them, you find it's not the case. You find that that's exactly what they play. Some of them have no life. Some of them are very unhappy. Some of them are very crude and corrupted. I don't mean all of them, of course. There are some, I'm sure, some wonderful people who are in the entertainment business. But very often, these people spend most of their life trying to get noticed and then hating the fact that they're noticed. They want to be famous, and then as soon as they're famous, they don't want it anymore because they can't live. They can't live a normal life. They can't go out. You can't. You know, like I'm not going to say if I ever did it, but certainly, you know, you get up in the morning sometime, and if you're not going somewhere on that one day every 5 years, and you're in a bathrobe, and you want to go outside and get the newspaper. And you say, all right, you look, there's nobody out there. You run out to get it, right? And you're going to dress, people are going to see, it might see you, you don't want people to see you like that, right? Because you are who you really are, but you don't want the public necessarily to see that, right? With a celebrity, it's the same idea very often, that they seem to be these wonderful people, but the closer you get to them, the more you see the corruption and the sadness that a lot of them have. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them. But when it comes to great rabbinic figures and great spiritual leaders, these people, on the other hand, are very plain from the outside. When you meet them, you don't think, like, unless you know who they are, you don't know who they are. They don't act differently. They don't have these great entourages. They don't have limousines. They're walking down the street in Jerusalem in a black suit and a black hat, and they look like any other guy in a black suit and a black hat until you get close to them and you get to realize how amazing some of these people are. And when they do, it rubs off on you. You get to realize how inspired you can become. And that's what that's telling us here. When it says that the entire assembly of the children of Israel left Moshe's presence, it meant they left with Moshe's presence. They left with Moshe's affecting them. He had an effect on them just by being with him, just by seeing him, talking to him, seeing how he acts. It had an effect on him. And this is a very important point as far as how we deal with things with our environment. That that people that we associate with and things that we do have an effect on us. Now, certainly, I am not one who believes in the idea that you have to associate with everybody has to be like you. Right? You have a certain religious level. Well, everyone has to be like you. I don't believe in that myself, but I do believe that the environment you are in has an effect. That it's not necessarily a bad effect, but it has an effect. Like, I raise children. I raise children in a little town, like in the middle of nowhere, and I raise children in Toronto, which, as far as the Jewish world is concerned, outside of Israel, there's probably no better place to raise children, as far as being for Jewish purposes. So here, and other things too. So here I had some kids who are raised where almost everyone around like doesn't even keep kosher, let alone Shabbos. They have no idea what we're dealing with. On the other hand, I brought up kids who are in an area where everybody is observant. There were pluses and minuses to both. But one of the things you saw is that while my kids who grew up in the small towns had to struggle with the basics, people challenging them on very basic levels. Why do you keep kosher, and why do you believe in this and believe in that? My kids who were raised here didn't have that. But that they did, and therefore their struggles and their discussions were on a higher level already. It was like they were gifted in order to have that because they live in this environment. Your environment affects you, right? Who you associate with affects you. The place you are affects you. It doesn't mean that you have to be in a place where everybody's like you, but you have to know this to be true. And therefore, you want to have, to some extent, at least an environment as much as you can, that is not going to corrupt what you're doing. Right? It's like I find, for instance, how our shul does things, and that we want to be a shul for people who have no more Jewish understanding than the fact that they know they're Jewish. So people who are fully observant and totally cognizant of all of our obligations as Jews. And I want both of these groups and everyone in between to come here and to feel at home. And I feel that is the best way for all of us to be. Right? And I don't think it is as good for me to go to a shul where everybody is just like me. I'll give you a rabbi of a shul where everybody in that shul is religious, they send their kids to the same school, they all have the same ideas, and my job would be to help educate them and to keep them on the path. But I don't find that as appealing. I don't even find that as the real way that we would want things. But it doesn't mean that environment doesn't affect us. It does. Not always bad, but it does have an effect.
It's more rewarding for all of us.
This
is more rewarding for all of us who come here.
Sure.
It keeps us focused on what
it keeps you focused, but it also teaches you the idea of respect people and of accepting people. Sometimes we get a little arrogant and we think that that there are type A people and type B people, and we're type A, and people who I associate with are type A, and other ones aren't as good. I remember what happened to me. It was an eye opener for me when I was a lot younger, and I had to do funerals. And sometimes you'd be called to do a funeral, and you don't know the people. It's because they need a rabbi, and they don't have one. They're not observant, and so you get a call. Can you come in and do a funeral? So you do it, and I meet the family. And it's a couple of people, and they very. Let's say in this, I'll just think of this particular case. They're simple people. They're not wealthy. They're not well connected. They're not in the newspaper. They're not public figures, and they're not observant. So I say, all right, we're going to do the funeral. It's going to be there's 10 people are going to come. And I ask them, are you sure you're going to have the 10 men? We can have a minyan. 15 people are going to come. Yeah, who's going to come? Maybe these are simple people. And you go there and there's 100 people there. Why? Because they had a life. These people have a life, and they had people they worked with, and they had friends, and they had family. And sometimes we get a little arrogant, and we say, I'm a public person. I know that I have a lot of people. This person's not public. All right, so they're not rich, and they don't have a lot of people. They're not community leaders, right? But the fact is, right? People are important. And people have lives, and they have feelings, and they have love and hate, and good things and bad things, and therefore when we respect and we treat people with dignity, no matter what they're like, within all of those differences, it's a bonus for us. It doesn't take away from us at all. I think the fact that our shul is not only that it has people in it of all different types, but that we say that's what we want it to be, makes it what's so special, and really what makes us unique, and is probably the reason that one of the main reasons we've grown to the extent that we've grown. I mean, over almost certainly over 100%, closing in on 200% in the last 5 years. That's a lot of growth, and it's all because of you, Julie, and that was my advertisement for our shul today. But I believe that's what it's talking about when it says that. Okay. If you look on 520 and 521, we get to meet a fellow by the name of Bezalel. You might have heard the name Bezalel. For those of you who go to Israel, there's an art school, the Bezalel School of Art. You're going to find out why now. Why didn't he have a law school? It says here, Moshe says to the children of Israel in the first line, "See, Hashem is proclaimed by name, Betzalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehuda." So Hashem has said, this person, Betzalel, whose father's name is Uri, his grandfather's name is Hur, and he comes from the tribe of Judah, of Yehuda. So this person, what about him? He filled him with godly spirit, with wisdom, insight, and knowledge, and with every craft, to weave designs, to work with gold, silver, and copper, stone cutting for setting, wood carving, to perform every craft or design. He gave him the ability to teach him, and Olav, son of Avisamach, and the tribe of Dan. He filled them with a wise heart to do every craft of the carver, weaver of designs, and an embroiderer, with turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool, and the linen, and the weaver, the artisans of every craft. Basically, Hashem, right, you have a question. Hashem wants us to make all of these things, right, for the Mishkan. Take gold and make it into an ark. Take gold and make it into this and make it into that. Well, you know what? We've been slaves for 240 years. How are we going to be artists? What kind of an artist am I going to be? Hashem says to me, okay, tomorrow I want you to paint the Mona Lisa. Well, I don't know how to paint. I don't even think I could do it. Maybe I could. I don't know. So the Jews say, how do you want us to build a building? You want us to build a building. We have this portable building. Be able to put it together, take it apart. You want us to make all of this artwork and all these objects and precisely the way you want it. Well, we don't know how to do this, right? It's like you got a room full of accountants telling them they got to go and build a house. Right? It's not going to work so well. So Hashem said, you're right. I'm going to take this person, Betzalel, and I'm going to give him a gift that he's going to have the ability and the knowledge, the inner wisdom, to know how to do every craft and every type of art. He's going to know how to do it. It's going to be a gift that he has. And that's why, of course, they call it School of Art, the Betzalel School of Art, because he was the original person who had every form of knowledge of the aesthetic world, of all the types of things that you had to make, of wood and weaving and gold and all of that. As it says here, that's who Betzalel was. Now, it's interesting enough, because whenever Hashem refers to Betzalel, he always refers to him, as it's in the English, it says, Hashem is proclaimed by name, Betzalel, son of Uri. What does that have to say? Hashem is proclaimed by name. What is this by name? Like, he's going to proclaim him by what else? All right, we don't know who he is. Now, Hashem has to tell us who he is. So how's he going to tell us if he doesn't tell us his name? And so the Medrash tells us a very interesting thing. The word by name here is not to tell you that he was told to us with his name. It's to tell you it's because of his name that Hashem picked him. And why? Because the Medrash says a good name is better than good oil. That's what it says. So, funny line. It comes from Koheles, from King Solomon. Good name is better than good oil. Shem Tov is better than Shemen Tov. Why is that? Well, let's look at it a minute. Good oil has many purposes, but one of them is the fragrance of the oil. And a good oil that is made for fragrance will have a fragrance that can carry quite a distance. Right? Something that's very often you can have fragrances, smells that can go very far away from the object itself. You can have an object in one room and you can smell it in another room. Right? It has that ability. And that is to say that the fragrance of an object carries. Right? It carries. It's bigger than the object. Then the same thing with a person. If a person has a good reputation, a good name, has a good reputation, that they're honest, that they can be trusted, the whole world will find this out. This spreads much more. Even though a good fragrance that spreads a lot, but a good name does much more. And because that's really the important thing. Nobody is really remembered for a lot of the things that we do, but they are remembered for being a good person. Right? If you go into the cemetery, you don't have, this guy was the best driver we ever knew. It doesn't say that in anybody's tomb, right? It doesn't say nobody could play pool like Joe. Right? It doesn't say that on their tombstone. What does it always say in their tombstone? He was a good person. He was loving. He took care of his family. That's what it says, right? Because that's what's really important. Right? Those are the real important things. That comes from having a good name. A person has a good name, that's worth a lot. That's why it's so serious when somebody says something bad about you, that just attacks your good name. Right? It's very serious, and people do these things. And the idea is that Betzalel was known for having a good name. He was a good person. and therefore it says every time Hashem refers to him, he says by name to tell you, I picked him because he had a good name. He is a person who has disciplined himself and has acted in a way that the world knows that he's a good person. And that's the kind of person I want to build my temple. I don't want a person who necessarily knows the best art. And I don't necessarily want the person who is the best scholar. I want the person who has the best name. If I'm going to build my temple, I want the person who everybody likes, who everybody respects, who everybody knows is honest and trustworthy. That's who I want to build my temple. And so that's why he picks him.
Well, if you analyze the name Bezalel,
it means in the shade of God. That's what it means. That and what is that? And that's because you know there's songs "Me and My Shadow," right? When the guy dances and the shadow follows him. So that's exactly the idea. And when you're in the shadow of God, that means that everything you do is what God would do. Because if God would move his arm, you move your arm, right, so to speak. So if God acts in a certain way, then you act in a certain way. You are acting like God's shadow.
But that's
right?
exactly what we're all supposed to be doing anyhow. Whether or not your name is Bezalel or Helen.
Right. It's just that he did, but that was, so for some reason his family saw that in him, and that's why he was given that name. Right, when we're given names, is because we have a certain trait innately that's good. So our family don't necessarily realize it, but they give us names to show us that trait, and it's often the case. Another interesting thing is that you see that Bezalel, right, he was given the wisdom to do everything. So then you have to ask, then what has he got a partner for? Now you see he has a partner, this Oliav, who comes from the tribe of Dan. Now what do you need him for? Bezalel could do it by himself. So this is one of the ideas that Bezalel had a good name, was that he was a good leader, and a good leader understands that often you have to work with other people, not just do things on your own. Like anyone knows, if somebody has an idea and you don't like the idea, the way you stop it is you tell them, okay, let's do it. We'll make a committee. A committee is going to kill any idea, right? As soon as you make a committee. If you say, all right, you want to make a party? The shul should have a party on Saturday night? Okay, go ahead and do it. They'll do it. And you'll have a party on Saturday night. Now, if you say, come to me and you say, the shul should have a party on Saturday night, and I don't want the shul to have a party on Saturday night, but I don't want to say no and hurt your feelings, so I say, okay, go get a committee and put it together and we'll have a party. And I'll know that you're never going to have a party, because the committee is never going to be able to organize and do it, right? So it's easier to do things by yourself. It's better to do it with a committee, because then everybody has ownership. Everyone feels a part of it. So here, Bezalel could do it by himself, and it's easier for him to do it by himself. But they picked him a partner, and they picked a partner, interestingly enough, from the tribe of Dan. Now, the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Dan were very different. One of the main differences is that basically, if you had to rate them, the tribe of Yehuda, that's the kings. Right? Mashiach comes from the tribe of Yehuda. King David came from the tribe of Yehuda. This is the tribe. You want to come from a tribe, this is the tribe to come from. Like, you are the famous one. You've got the background, right? You've got the yichus by coming from Yehuda. From Dan, it wasn't that way. Dan were the stragglers. Dan had a lot of idol worshippers. That tribe was sort of like, it's like the poor cousin. He's got to come with you. You bring him with you. So for Bezalel from Yehuda to have to work with this guy when he didn't need to, and it just made it harder, was also a sign of the greatness of Bezalel, that he was able to work with him peacefully and well, and both of them could use their strengths to do their job. And this was one of the signs that shows you how Bezalel was a person of impeccable reputation, because he was able to work even with people who were from a much lower social class than him, and as if they were equals. And that's why they put it together that way. And then it goes through a description of all the different things, but I want to skip ahead because there's 2 parshas. We haven't even looked at the second one, and we only got 3 minutes. So if we look on 531, it's second parsha, Parsha's Perkudei, and here it basically tells us that these are the reckonings of the tabernacle of the Mishkan, the tabernacle of testimony, which were reckoned at Moshe's bidding, the labor of the Levites, and it goes through how it was done, right? And then it says, it tells us, if we go ahead to page 534 and 535, it tells us that they brought the tabernacle to Moshe. Right? Right before then, that's the last line, it tells us that the Jewish people did everything Moshe said, that God wanted. The Mishkan is completed, 100% completed. It's finished now. The only thing they have to do is put it together. And it says they brought the tabernacle to Moshe, the tent and all its utensils, the hook, the planks, and everything. So the commentaries say, well, hold on a second. God says that you finished it, it's time to put it together. It's now the first day of Nisan, it's time to put it together. We're going to have a Mishkan, we're going to use it. Now you made all the pieces, now let's make the jigsaw puzzle, let's do it. So it says that all the Jews got together and they couldn't do it. It was too hard. The walls were too heavy. I mean, you're talking about an enormous building. How are these people with their bodies, right? And you don't have cranes. Going to put this together, tie this, move this, shape this, put this here, put this there. Like all of these things, they couldn't do it. So what do when you can't do it? They brought the tabernacle to Moses, as it says in 33. They brought it to him. So how do I know that they brought it and they couldn't do it? Because the next line says, it tells you all the pieces. They brought the tent, its utensils, its hooks, its planks, its bars. They didn't bring it all assembled. They gave it in pieces. And why did they do it? Because they said, look, Moshe, we can't do it, you do it. The entire Jewish nation, 3 million people, okay, can't do it. But you better do it, right? You imagine it's like, you have the head of the company and all the people in the company are supposed to be making watches, and then they say, we can't make this watch. It's just, it's too hard. So you do it. The whole company can't do it, so one guy's got to do it. Right? The whole Jewish people can't put together this. It's too heavy, but Moshe, he's strong enough to do it. He's not strong enough to do it. He can't do it. If 10 men can't do it, 1 man can't do it. Right? You can't tell me that. So they bring it to him, right? So it goes on, and it tells us, in line 42 on the next page, like everything that Hashem commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel perform all the labor. Moshe saw the entire work, and behold, they had done it as Hashem had said. So what is it telling us? It's saying the following, that the idea that's behold, what is it? Why is it there? This is that Moshe sees they did all the work, right? They couldn't put it up. Behold, it's up. It's up. Right? How did that happen? So it says that the Jewish people couldn't do it, they bring it to Moshe. And Moshe looks to God and says, what is this, crazy? If 3 million people can't do it, how am I supposed to do it? I can't do it. God says, go ahead and do it. Go do it. He says, I can't do it. Do it. Go ahead. So Moshe starts doing it, and it does it itself. And then that's what happens. So if the Jewish people couldn't do it, and Moshe couldn't do it, right, and God knew Moshe couldn't do it, and Moshe knew he couldn't do it, then what's the purpose of telling him, go ahead and do it, and then God does it? Say, like just either God should do it, or Moshe could do it. God could make Moshe do it. He has the ability. Why did he make it? Then Moshe has to try when he couldn't do it, and then God finishes it. Like, what's the purpose? So the idea is that when it comes to spiritual things, right, which is the assembly here, even though it's a physical act, but spiritual things like learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, having a Jewish life, all of these things, giving charity, all of the aspects of these things are spiritual acts, even if they're tied into the physical world. When it comes to the physical world, you're judged by what you do. Like you go to school, right? If they want to insult you in school, this is what they say. Well, I gave you a D on your test, but I give you an A for effort. Right? There's no A for effort on your report card. It's just a left-handed compliment. I know you're stupid. Right? You're not very smart. So you got to work real hard to get a D. And I know you worked real hard. So that's not much of a compliment, right? But what they're saying is that how do we judge you? What did you put in the test, right? I want to see the bottom line. That's how I judged you. How much money did you make? How did you do on the test? How much effort you put in? How hard it was for you? I don't care. I'm the bottom line. That's how the world is. That's how the physical world is. You are judged by what you accomplished. What have you done? You go to work and you try a whole day to do your job, but you don't do it, you're going to get fired. But another person who can do your job in 2 minutes can sit around for 7 hours watching the television, they'll get a raise. Right? When they could do so much more. But they're only judged by what they did. They did what they were told to do, and that was it. It's not the effort. That's the physical world. But the spiritual world doesn't work that way. In the spiritual world, it's the effort. When Hashem says to us to do a mitzvah, when Hashem wants us to learn Torah, and we say, I'm not that smart. It's hard for me to learn Torah. I can't sit still. I don't have a head for it. I got ADD, whatever. I can't do these things. You know, Hashem says, try. Go ahead, try. If you try it, behold, it'll be done. You will accomplish more than you think, and I will reward you as if you do it, even if you don't do it. Even in the end, you want to go and start an organization and help single mothers, right? And you don't raise enough money to do it, but you've tried and you tried and you tried. In the eyes of God, you did it because you put all your effort in. You did the most you can. Sometimes, right? So sometimes we have to learn that when it comes to spiritual things, we're judged by the effort, not by the final result. So you have two kids. One kid is very bright, one kid is normal, and they're both learning Torah. The one who's very bright, right, he can finish his homework in 20 minutes. The one who's not so bright takes him 2 hours. And the one who's not so bright doesn't do such a great job. Who gets more merit?
The one who isn't so great.
That's right, the one who worked harder. The merit,
didn't come
right,
in.
from God comes from the effort, not from the results. Certainly results make a difference, but the real reward comes from the effort. So we need to know in our lives, when we're growing and we're doing things, that we don't always accomplish the goal. We don't always, our house is not necessarily, the first try is kosher. We're not always, it's not, we want to try to keep Shabbos, so it's too hard for us sometimes. We want to try to do things and we find it's too difficult. If you put the effort in and you really try, then the results are going to be, they're pretty finite. Either you won't accomplish it, but you'll accomplish it and you'll have no idea how you did it, because God helps, right? Or you'll accomplish it, right? Those are the only 3 options. But it makes no difference which of those 3 it is. The effort is how you're judged. That's how God judges us, because you tried. It's the effort that we put into it. So that when it's, there's more merit to walk to shul on a snowy day than it is on a nice day. Because on a snowy day, like for me, I always say, for me to go to shul on a snowy day, I have to like put on my armor. It takes 15 minutes just to get dressed. I got to put on, this piece of clothing, and then a sweater, and then a jacket, and then a scarf, and then a face mask, and all the stuff I got to put on. Right, all of that effort to walk to shul. When in June I can walk to shul just like this. Oh, it's time to go. I go. Right? No getting ready. No finding your coat, finding your boots, finding this. You go. Right? So I get more merit for the effort that I put in the winter than I do in the summer. A person who lives further away from the shul gets more merit walking to shul than a person who lives close. I'm not telling you that's a good idea to live far from shul, but it's a fact. That's what the Talmud says. That's what this is telling us here. The Jews brought it to Moshe, and he taught them a lesson. The lesson was, it's not the fact that you finished the Mishkan and you put it up. It's the effort you put into it. And Hashem, that's what Hashem does. Moshe starts the work, and behold, it's done. He did the same thing before. We didn't talk about it, but I spoke about it in shul. He tells Moshe, make the menorah. He says, make a menorah. What's a menorah? So he says, this is a menorah. It looks like a candelabra, and it's got this many things. And he says, I don't understand. He says, okay, Hashem says, I'm going to draw it for you. I'm going to take fire, I'm going to draw one for you. And he draws it for him. And he says, okay, I understand. So he goes back and he starts working on it, and he can't do it. He doesn't have the ability to make it. Moshe is supposed to make the menorah himself, right? You imagine the menorah is like this big, right? It's not like a little menorah you have in your house. And it's all made out of like one piece, and it's out of gold, and he has to make it in exactly the way he wants him to make it. I can't do it. So he says, take the gold and throw it into the fire, because you have to make it soft so you can mold it. So he says, okay, he throws it in the fire, and the menorah comes out. So if God knew that he couldn't make the menorah, which he did know, because he made Moshe, right? He created him. He knew he couldn't do it. Then why go through this whole thing? Just tell him, throw it in the fire, and it'll come out. What do you have to go through this whole process for? Because again, it's the effort that's important. It's not the end result that's important. It's the effort you put into getting to that end result. That's what makes you a good person. That's what helps you be change. That's what gives you a good name. All of these things are here. These efforts. That's what the effort you put into something is what makes you a better person.